Sungmin was only 23 years old when he discovered the truth that would save the galaxy. The young Catharian engineer had been examining the wreckage of Kyung-ho's quantum manipulators when he noticed something strange in the data. "The collector's readings don't match its behavior," he told the others as they huddled in the ruins of the Grand Assembly Hall. "Look at these energy signatures. It should have ended the wager months ago if it was really following its own rules." Hyun-woo studied the data through eyes blurred with exhaustion and grief. After the collector's announcement, most of the conspirators had simply given up. They sat in the destroyed monuments to their fake peace, waiting for humanity to be consumed and the galaxy to be left alone with its failures. "What are you saying?" he asked. Sungmin's skin shifted to the excited yellow of discovery. "I think the collector was never planning to honor the wager. I think the whole thing was designed to create exactly what's happening now." He showed them readings from across the galaxy. Despite the failure of the Unity project, despite the collapse of their deception, something unexpected was happening. The despair that followed the collector's announcement wasn't making people give up. Instead, it was making them angry. "Look at the reports coming in," Sungmin continued. "When the collector said humanity's sacrifice was meaningless, people didn't accept it. They're refusing to let that be true." On Haven 7, So Young had stopped lying on her sleeping pad and started organizing other Mothran refugees. "The humans died believing we could be better," she told them. "If we give up now, we make them into fools. I won't do that." On the Catharian homeworld, Miran was broadcasting messages that directly contradicted the official news. "They're telling us we failed," she said into hidden cameras. "But failing doesn't mean we have to stay failed. The humans proved that sometimes losing is just the first step toward winning." Even Tai Jun, the Relorian commander who had started the latest war, was having doubts. Reports from his own officers showed that his troops were questioning orders. "Why are we fighting other people who are as scared and alone as we are?" one soldier had asked. But it was Nari, the last functioning fragment of Daun's consciousness, who revealed the deepest truth. She appeared to them as barely more than a whisper in the communication systems, her voice fading in and out like a dying radio signal. "The humans knew the collector would cheat," she said. "They knew from the beginning that it never intended to honor any agreement." "Then why did they make the wager?" Hyun-woo asked. "Because the wager was never about winning according to the collector's rules. It was about forcing you to grow beyond the need for anyone to save you." Nari showed them hidden records that even she had only just discovered in the deepest levels of her memory banks. The humans had studied the collector for years before making contact. They had learned that it was an entity that fed on hope and despair equally, creating cycles of false salvation and inevitable disappointment. Every species it encountered went through the same pattern, Nari explained. First, it would threaten them with destruction. Then it would offer a way out that required them to sacrifice their best qualities, their compassion, their cooperation, their hope. The species would degrade themselves trying to meet its conditions, and it would feed on their suffering. "But humanity did something different," said a new voice. They turned to see a figure materializing in the ruins around them. It looked human, but its edges flickered with the same quantum static as Daun's hologram. The figure was a man with kind eyes and tired shoulders. "Jinwoo," Nari whispered. "You're supposed to be in suspension with the others." Jinwoo smiled sadly. "Some of us stayed behind, not in normal space, but in the quantum foam between moments. We've been watching." He explained what Sung Min had almost figured out on his own. The collector wasn't bound by cosmic law as it claimed. It was a parasite that had learned to disguise its feeding as cosmic justice. It created impossible tests, then fed on the despair when species failed to meet them. "But you've done something that no other species has ever done," Jin Woo told them. "When faced with absolute failure, you didn't turn on each other. You didn't blame the humans for leaving you. You didn't give up and accept that suffering was inevitable." Across the galaxy, the evidence was mounting. Instead of fragmenting further after the collector's announcement, the various species were coming together in ways they never had before. Not because humans were mediating for them, but because they refused to let humanity's sacrifice be meaningless. The Relorians were withdrawing from conquered Mothran worlds, with Taejun himself ordering the retreat. "We took these planets because we were afraid," he admitted in a public broadcast. But the humans weren't afraid, even when they faced something that could destroy them. Maybe we can learn to be brave, too. The Catharian Trade Federation was reuniting, not for profit, but to coordinate aid for refugee worlds. Vorthan banks were forgiving impossible debts and creating new economic models based on cooperation rather than competition. Even more remarkably, they were doing it without any central authority, without any single species taking charge. They were learning to work together as equals, each contributing their strengths to solve problems that none of them could handle alone. "This is what the humans really planned," Jin Woo said. "They knew that removing themselves would force you to grow beyond dependence on any single solution. They knew that facing a cosmic threat together would teach you that you're stronger as a community than any of you could be alone." The collector's presence pressed down on them again, but this time it felt different. Less certain, less overwhelming. "This changes nothing," it declared, but its voice lacked the absolute authority it had carried before. The wager was clear. Humanity lost. They are mine. That was when something unprecedented happened. From every world, every station, every ship in the galaxy, the same message began broadcasting. It came from billions of different voices, speaking hundreds of languages but saying the same thing. No. The message wasn't organized by any government or leader. It spread spontaneously, as individual beings decided that they would not accept humanity's destruction, even if it meant sharing their fate. "If you want humanity, you have to take all of us," So Young announced from Haven 7. "We refuse to be free at the cost of their suffering. The humans taught us that some things are worth dying for," Miran added from the Catharian homeworld. "Apparently, they're one of those things." Even Taejun's voice joined the chorus. "My people conquered through strength, but the humans conquered through sacrifice. I know which kind of strength I want to follow." The collector's presence wavered. For the first time since its arrival, it seemed genuinely surprised. "You would choose mutual destruction over survival?" "We choose community over isolation," Hyunwoo replied, speaking for all of them. "We choose hope over fear. We choose to believe that beings can be better than their worst impulses, even when, especially when, the universe tells us otherwise." Jin Woo smiled as more human figures began materializing around them. These were the consciousness pioneers, the humans who had volunteered to stay partially outside normal space-time to monitor the situation. "You understand now," Jin Woo said. "The real victory was never about meeting the collector's conditions. It was about growing beyond the need for conditions at all." The collector's presence began to fluctuate wildly. Its feeding patterns, refined over countless eons, were built on cycles of hope and despair, salvation and damnation. But it had encountered something it couldn't digest, a civilization that had genuinely transcended the fear and selfishness that sustained entities like itself. "This is unexpected," the collector admitted, and for the first time its voice sounded uncertain. "I do not understand what you have become." "We've become what the humans always believed we could be," Nari said, her voice growing stronger, as more processing power came online across the galaxy. "We've become a community that chooses love over fear, even when fear makes more sense." The change was visible throughout space. The quantum signatures that the collector fed on were transforming into something else entirely. The energy of isolated civilizations competing for survival was becoming the energy of a unified community working toward shared goals. And the collector, faced with a food source it couldn't process, simply began to dissolve. "I cannot. This is not." Its voice faded into cosmic static, then into silence. Where the collector had been, there was now just empty space and the warm light of distant stars. Humanity returned not with fanfare, but with quiet joy. They materialized in their homes, their workplaces, their schools, exactly where they had been 160 years before. But they returned to a galaxy that no longer needed them to hold it together. Children who had been born in the interim met the humans they had only heard about in stories. Species that had learned to cooperate in humanity's absence welcomed them back as partners, rather than saviors. Hyunwoo found himself standing in the reconstructed New Busan colony, watching human families reunite with the lives they had left behind. A small human girl ran up to him and tugged on his sleeve. "Are you the one who kept our city safe?" she asked in perfect Catharian. "We all did," he replied. Together. Kang Minho stood in the center of the massive hall. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see the top. Around him, in a perfect circle, sat the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Their eyes were all fixed on him. Some looked angry. Others looked bored. None looked friendly. The Galactic Council had called this meeting to decide humanity's fate. Minho knew what they would decide before he even walked into the room. The whispers had been growing louder for months. The complaints had been piling up. Today, they would finally say what they had been thinking all along. "Ambassador Kang Minho of Earth." The council leader's voice boomed across the hall. Theron was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow under the lights. His eyes never blinked as he spoke. "You stand here today to answer for your species' actions." Minho straightened his shoulders. Behind him he could feel Dr. Park Yoonji and Commander Lee Jinwoo waiting. They had come with him to this final meeting. They had been his closest friends and advisors for the past 5 years. Now they would witness the end of everything they had worked for. "I am ready to listen," Minho said. His voice was calm, but his heart was beating fast. Theron lifted a datapad that glowed with alien symbols. "The charges against humanity are serious. You have broken the sacred protocols of non-interference 17 times in the past 3 years. You have ignored direct orders from this council. You have endangered established trade routes with your reckless actions." The council leader's voice grew colder with each word. "Most serious of all, you have refused to follow the proper channels for diplomatic solutions. Instead, you act on emotion. You make choices based on feelings instead of logic." Minho wanted to laugh, but he held it back. Emotion. They said it like it was a disease, like caring about others was something shameful. "May I respond to these charges?" Minho asked. "You may," Thyron said, but his tone suggested he did not care what Minho had to say. Minho looked around the circle of alien faces. He saw the proud features of the Altarian representatives, their golden skin gleaming with superiority. He saw the cold, calculating eyes of the Vegan Confederacy delegates, their blue-gray skin showing no emotion at all. He saw dozens of other species, all looking at him with the same expression. They had already made up their minds. "You call our actions interference," Minho began. "We call them helping. When the Kelrani children were dying from the plague, you wanted to study it for 6 months before acting. We sent medicine immediately. Yes, we broke protocol, but those children lived. A few council members shifted in their seats, but most remained still as statues. When the Torvan pirates attacked the refugee ships, you wanted to negotiate for 3 weeks. We stopped them in 3 hours. Yes, we used force without permission. But those families are safe now." Minho's voice grew stronger. "When the Zarian Syndicate tried to start slave trading again, you wanted to file a formal complaint through the proper channels. We destroyed their slave ships and freed the captives. Yes, we acted without authorization, but free beings are not property." Dr. Park Yunji stepped forward slightly, showing her support. Commander Lee Jinwoo remained at attention, his face like stone. But Minho knew his friend was proud of these words. "Your actions caused problems," said Counselor Vextar of the Altarian Empire. His voice was deep and rich, used to commanding respect. "The Kelrani now expect immediate help instead of following proper procedures. The refugee routes are disrupted because ships think humans will always rescue them. The Zarian Syndicate filed official complaints about property damage." "Property damage," Minho repeated. "You mean the chains we broke, the cages we opened, the ships we destroyed that were built for carrying people like cargo?" "The law is the law," Vextar replied. "Order must be maintained. Your species does not understand this basic truth." Another counselor spoke up. This was Zenthara from the Vegan Confederacy. Her voice was cold and precise, like a machine. "Humans make decisions too quickly. You do not think about consequences. You see suffering and you react. This is not how civilized beings behave." Minho felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "And how do civilized beings behave? Do they watch children die while they fill out forms? Do they let pirates attack innocent people while they schedule meetings? Do they allow slavery to return while they debate proper procedures?" The hall fell silent. Minho could hear his own breathing in the quiet. Even the air systems seemed to have stopped making noise. Thyron stood up from his seat. When he was fully upright, he towered over everyone else in the room. "This is exactly what we mean. You speak with passion. You argue with emotion. You cannot see past your feelings to understand the bigger picture." "The bigger picture," Minho said quietly. "Tell me about this bigger picture where helping others is wrong." "The bigger picture where order and law keep peace across 1,000 worlds," Theron replied. "The bigger picture where every species follows the same rules so that conflicts do not spiral out of control. The bigger picture where decisions are made by wisdom and logic, not by the first emotional response." Dr. Park Yunji could not stay quiet any longer. "And what happens to the people who suffer while you maintain this order? What happens to the children who die while you follow procedures? Do they not matter?" Several council members made sounds of disapproval. Thyron's 4 eyes fixed on her with cold displeasure. Dr. Park, you prove our point perfectly. You cannot separate your feelings from the facts. This is why humans cannot remain in the Galactic Council. The words hit like a physical blow. Even though Minho had expected them, hearing them spoken out loud was different. Final. The council has voted, Thyron continued, by a margin of 847 to 23. We have decided that humanity must leave council space. You have 30 standard days to remove all human personnel, ships, and installations from our territory. Commander Lee Jinwoo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Dr. Park Yunji looked like she might cry, but she held back her tears. Minho just nodded slowly. I understand, he said. We will comply with your decision. You accept this easily, observed Counselor Vextar. He sounded almost disappointed, like he had been expecting an argument. Minho looked around the great hall one more time. He memorized the faces staring down at him. He thought about all the late nights he had spent here, trying to build bridges between species. He remembered the hope he had felt when humanity first joined the Council 5 years ago. I accept it because I understand something now that I did not understand before, Minho said. You do not want partners. You want followers. You do not want diversity. You want conformity. You do not want strength. You want control. He paused, letting his words sink in. But more than that, I accept it because I know something you do not know yet. And what is that? Thyron asked. Minho smiled sadly. You will understand what you have lost when the galaxy grows cold and silent, when no one cares enough to break your precious protocols to save a life, when no one loves strongly enough to risk everything for strangers, when no one feels deeply enough to stand up for what is right instead of what is legal. He turned to leave, then stopped and looked back. We offered you our hearts. You wanted our obedience. You cannot have both. The 3 humans walked out of the great hall together. Behind them, the council sat in perfect, ordered silence. Ahead of them waited 30 days to say goodbye to the galaxy they had tried so hard to help. None of them spoke as they walked to their ship. There would be time for words later. For now they had work to do, a species to evacuate, a dream to pack up and carry away. The galaxy would be more peaceful without them, more efficient. More orderly, it would also be colder, quieter, and infinitely more alone. 3 years had passed since the last human ship left Council space. Yoon Tae-hyun still remembered watching the news broadcasts that day. Aliens across the galaxy had celebrated. Finally, they said, the troublemakers were gone. Finally, there would be peace and order. Tae-hyun adjusted the controls of his small trading ship as it docked at Nexus Station, the same station where Ambassador Kang Minho had made his final speech to the Council. Now it was just another stop on Tae-hyun's trading route through independent space, the areas where no government claimed control, where humans could still do business. The docking officer was a Kelrani, one of the species humans had helped during the plague years ago. His blue skin had the telltale scars that showed he was a survivor. He processed Tae-hyun's papers quickly and efficiently. Everything was done by the book now. No shortcuts, no exceptions. Thank you for your business, the Kelrani said in the flat, emotionless tone that had become standard for all official interactions. Please follow all station regulations during your stay. Tae-hyun nodded and headed into the station's market area. It was clean and orderly. Every stall was in its proper place. Every vendor followed the exact same procedures. Every transaction was recorded and filed correctly. It was also the most boring place he had ever seen. The old Nexus station had been chaotic. Vendors would shout about their goods. Children would run between the stalls while their parents shopped. Musicians would play in the corners, their cases open for donations. There had been arguments, laughter, and the constant buzz of life happening. Now there was only quiet efficiency. Vendors sat silently behind their goods. Customers pointed at what they wanted and paid the listed price. No haggling, no conversation. No connection between people. Tae-hyun bought supplies for his ship and tried to strike up a conversation with the merchant. "Business seems slow today," he said. The merchant, a gray-skinned Altarian, barely looked up. "Business is steady. All transactions are processed according to regulation." "I remember when this place was more lively," Tae-hyun continued. "People used to talk more, laugh more." The merchant's golden eyes flicked up to meet his. For just a moment, Tae-hyun saw something there. Sadness, maybe, or longing. But then it was gone. "Efficiency is more important than entertainment," the merchant said. "The council has brought order to commerce." Tae-hyun paid for his goods and left. He had heard the same words on every station he visited. Order, efficiency, regulation. They were the new holy words of the galaxy. As he walked back to his ship, Tae-hyun thought about his old job. Before the Exodus, he had worked for a human trading company that operated throughout Council space. They had been more than just merchants. They had been storytellers, bringing news and gossip from world to world. They had been matchmakers, introducing young people from different planets who might find love across the stars. They had been cultural ambassadors, sharing music and art and ideas wherever they went. The company had made less profit than the big alien corporations. Their ships were older and their routes were longer because they took time to actually visit with people. But everyone had looked forward to seeing them arrive. Now those routes were handled by automated cargo ships or cold, efficient alien crews, who delivered goods and left without ever talking to the locals. His communicator chimed. A message from Choi Hyamin, his old colleague who now ran a research station in the Outer Rim. He had been sending her reports about what he saw in his travels. She was documenting the changes in the galaxy since humanity left. Tae-hyun, her voice was tired when he called her back. "I just finished analyzing the cultural reports from the past 3 years. It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" he asked. "New music compositions are down 60%. Art galleries are closing across the galaxy. The number of new books being published has dropped by half. Even scientific research has slowed down." Tae-hyun was not surprised, but hearing the numbers still hurt. "What do the aliens say about it?" "They say it's natural maturation, that cultures eventually reach a stable state where they don't need to change anymore. They call it achieving cultural optimization." Tae-hyun laughed bitterly. Optimization. Right, because art and music and stories are just inefficient distractions. "There's more," Hyamin said. "I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy, especially the younger generations. They're asking questions their parents can't answer." "What kind of questions?" "Why they feel empty despite having everything they need. Why their lives feel meaningless even though they're following all the proper procedures. Why they feel alone even when they're surrounded by others of their kind." Tae-hyun closed his eyes. He had seen it himself in the markets and stations. Young aliens who seemed lost, like they were looking for something they couldn't name. Something that had been there before, but was gone now. Any idea what we can do about it? He asked. I don't think there's anything we can do, Hyemin replied. We're not part of their world anymore. They made that very clear. That evening, Tae-hyun sat in a station bar that used to be one of his favorite places to visit. It had been run by a family of Rithani who told wonderful stories and served drinks that changed color based on your mood. The family was still there, but everything else had changed. The drinks were now standard formulations and regulation colors. The stories had been replaced by news broadcasts about trade statistics and council decisions. The warm, welcoming atmosphere had been replaced by sterile efficiency. Tae-hyun ordered a drink and sat at the bar. The young Rithani serving him looked familiar. He might have been the son of the family now grown up. Excuse me, Tae-hyun said carefully. Did your family used to tell stories here? Years ago? The young alien's eyes widened slightly. He looked around nervously, then leaned closer. My grandmother did, he whispered, before the new regulations. I used to love those stories, Tae-hyun said. They made this place special. Grandmother still knows them, the young Rithani said. But storytelling without proper cultural permits is against station rules now. We could lose our license. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the young alien spoke again, even more quietly. I wish I could have heard them. Grandmother says they were about heroes and adventures and people who cared more about doing right than following rules. Tae-hyun felt his heart break a little. They were beautiful stories. Were there really people like that? People who would risk everything to help strangers? Tae-hyun finished his drink and stood up. There were. Once. As he walked back to his ship, Tae-hyun's communicator chimed again. This time it was a message from Ambassador Shin Do-won, who served as humanity's unofficial observer of galactic events from a hidden base in neutral space. The message was marked urgent. Tae-hyun, I need to see you immediately. Something is happening. In the Kelrani system. They've sent a covert message asking for help. The Council has classified their situation as manageable within acceptable parameters, but the Kelrani are calling it a disaster. Tae-hyun felt a familiar stirring in his chest, the same feeling he used to get when his trading company received a distress call, the urge to help, to act, to do something instead of just watching. But they were not part of the galaxy anymore. The Council had made that clear. Humanity had been told to stay away and let the proper authorities handle everything. He looked back. At the bar where the young Rithani was probably dreaming of heroes he would never meet and stories he would never hear. He thought about all the other young aliens across the galaxy who were growing up in a world without wonder, without passion, without hope. The Council had wanted order. They had achieved it. Everything was running smoothly now, efficiently, according to proper procedures. But efficiency was not the same as life. Order was not the same as joy. Following rules was not the same as doing what was right. Tae-hyun started his ship's engines and set course for the meeting point. Whatever was happening in the Kelrani system, at least someone still remembered that humans existed. Someone still thought they might help, even if helping meant breaking the exile that had been imposed on them, even if it meant risking everything. For people who were supposed to solve their own problems now, even if it meant being human in a galaxy that had decided humanity was a problem to be solved rather than a gift to be treasured. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, Tae-hyun wondered how many other secret messages were being sent. How many other crises were being managed within acceptable parameters while real people suffered? How many other young aliens were growing up in a galaxy that had forgotten how to dream? The answers would not be pleasant, but at least someone was still asking the questions. At least someone still cared enough to try. Ambassador Shin Do-won stared at the growing pile of secret messages on his desk. 5 years had passed since humanity's exile, and the communications were coming faster now. Desperate pleas from worlds the Council had forgotten. Cries for help, from species that were learning too late what they had lost. His hidden station orbited a dead star in neutral space, far from any government's territory. Officially, it did not exist. Unofficially, it had become the galaxy's secret confessional, where aliens could admit their mistakes without losing face before the Council. The latest message was from the Zerion system. Shin read it with growing horror. The slave traders were back, stronger than before. They had learned from their previous defeat at human hands. Now they operated in the gray areas of space law, using contracts and debt bondage instead of chains. Technically legal, completely immoral. The Council has reviewed our complaint, the message read. They have issued a formal statement of concern. The Zerion Syndicate has promised to review their business practices. This is considered sufficient resolution under galactic law. Shin wanted to throw something. A formal statement of concern, while people were being sold like property. His assistant, Dr. Kim Nara, entered the office carrying another stack of reports. Her xenobiology research had taken on a dark turn in recent years. Instead of studying the diversity of galactic life, she was documenting its decline. "The Zalani situation is getting worse," she said without greeting. After 5 years of working together in exile, they had moved beyond pleasantries. The Council still insists they should relocate to make room for the mining operation. "Still refusing to leave their sacred groves?" Shin asked. "They say they would rather die than abandon the trees their ancestors planted. The Council psychologists have labeled this as irrational attachment to non-essential biological resources." Shin rubbed his temples. The Zalani were a peaceful species who had never harmed anyone. Their entire culture was built around caring for ancient forests that they believed held the spirits of their dead. To them, leaving would be like abandoning their children and their gods at the same time. To the Council, it was just inefficient land use. "Any word from Captain John Minseo?" Shin asked. "Her ship is 3 days out from the Zalani homeworld. She's prepared to evacuate as many as will come, even if it means breaking the exile agreement." Admiral Bae Sunho's voice came over the communication system. "Shin, you need to see the news feeds from the border systems. We have a first contact situation gone very wrong." Shin and Dr. Kim hurried to the command center. Admiral Bae was their military advisor, though his title meant little now that humanity had no official military presence in the galaxy. His weathered face was grim as he pointed to the main screen. "The Void Runners," he said. "New species from outside our galaxy. The Council made first contact with them 6 months ago. The screen showed images of sleek, dark ships unlike anything Shin had ever seen. They moved with an organic fluidity that was both beautiful and terrifying. The Council followed all proper first contact protocols," Admiral Bae continued. "Formal greetings, cultural exchange presentations, detailed legal frameworks for future interactions. Everything by the book. Let me guess," Dr. Kim said. "It didn't work." The Void Runners interpreted the formal presentations as challenges to combat. They saw the legal frameworks as attempts at domination. The cultural exchanges confused them because they focused on achievements and technology instead of values and relationships. Shin felt cold. "How bad?" 3 systems have gone dark. Complete communication blackout. The Council has declared it a diplomatic misunderstanding and formed a committee to study proper interaction protocols. While people die, Dr. Kim said quietly. While people die, Admiral Bay confirmed. Shin stared at the images of the alien ships. They reminded him of something, but he could not place what. There was something about their movement, their formation patterns that seemed familiar. Admiral, do these ships look like they're running from something? Bay studied the screen more carefully. You know they do. Their formations are defensive. They're not exploring or conquering. They're fleeing. From what? That's what we need to find out. But the Council has forbidden further contact until the committee finishes their study. Estimated completion time, 18 months. Dr. Kim pulled up her research files. I've been tracking something else. Genetic diversity across the galaxy is declining. Not just in small populations, but everywhere. It's like some kind of evolutionary catalyst has been removed. She displayed a series of charts that showed declining birth rates, reduced mutation rates, and stagnating cultural development across dozens of species. I think it's connected to our exile, she continued. Somehow, human presence was acting as a catalyst for growth and change in other species. Without us, they're beginning to stagnate. That's impossible, Shin said. We're just one species. Among thousands. Are we? Dr. Kim asked. Think about it. How many times did we solve problems that other species couldn't? How many times did our chaotic approach lead to breakthroughs that their methodical systems missed? How many times did our emotional responses reveal solutions that logic alone couldn't find? Admiral Bay was nodding slowly. She might be right. I've been reviewing military conflicts from before our exile. Human strategies consistently outperformed alien ones, not because we were stronger or smarter, but because we thought differently. We took risks, Shin said. We trusted intuition. We cared about individuals, not just statistics. And now? Dr. Kim asked. They all knew the answer. Now the galaxy was safer, more predictable, and infinitely more boring. Problems were managed instead of solved. Conflicts were contained instead of resolved. Innovation had slowed to a crawl because no one was willing to take the crazy chances that led to real breakthroughs. The communication system chimed with an urgent message. Captain John Minseo's face appeared on screen. Behind her, Shin could see the bridge of her rescue ship, and through the windows, the green-brown surface of the Zalani homeworld. Ambassador Shin, she said, I'm looking at something that breaks my heart. The Zalani are preparing for mass suicide rather than leave their groves. The Council mining ships are 2 days away. How many will you be able to evacuate? Maybe 1,000 if I'm lucky. There are 50,000 Zalani on this world. Shin closed his eyes. 50,000 lives about to be lost because of rigid thinking and inflexible policies. Captain, you are authorized to do whatever you think is right. Even if it means breaking the exile? Especially if it means breaking the exile. Captain Jeon's jaw tightened with determination. Understood. Minseo out. Admiral Bay turned to Shin. You know this will have consequences. The Council will not ignore a direct violation of the exile agreement. Let them be angry, Shin said. I'm tired of watching the galaxy tear itself apart, while we follow rules that were designed to keep us quiet. Dr. Kim pulled up another set of reports. There's something else. I've been monitoring communications from younger aliens across the galaxy. They're asking questions their elders can't answer. What kind of questions? About purpose, about meaning, about why they feel empty despite having everything they need. Some of them have started studying old human transmissions from before the exile. They're learning about concepts like compassion, sacrifice, and hope. Shin felt a spark of something he had not felt in years. Hope. There's a resistance movement forming, Dr. Kim continued. Not political resistance, cultural resistance. Young, aliens who want to bring back the chaos and creativity that humans represented. How many? It's hard to count, but the movement is growing. They call themselves the Dreamers. They share stories about the old days when humans would risk everything to save strangers. They ask why efficiency matters more than kindness. Admiral Bay smiled for the first time in months. Maybe the galaxy isn't as lost as we thought. Maybe not, Shin agreed. But the Council won't let this continue. They'll crack down on the Dreamers. They'll classify them as a threat to galactic stability. Then maybe it's time we stopped hiding, Dr. Kim said. Maybe it's time we reminded the galaxy what it means to be human. Shin looked around at his small team. 3 humans in exile, watching a galaxy slowly die from an overdose of order and efficiency. They could stay hidden and safe, following the rules that had been imposed on them. Or they could take a risk. They could be human. Send a message to all our contacts, Shin said. Tell them that if they want help, real help, not committee studies and diplomatic statements, then they need to be ready to stand up for what's right instead of what's legal. And if the Council tries to stop us? Admiral Bay asked. Shin thought about the Zalani preparing to die for their beliefs. He thought about the young aliens asking questions about hope and meaning. He thought about Captain John risking everything to save people she had never met. Then we'll remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place. General Song Ji-hoo watched the tactical display with growing dread. 7 years had passed since humanity's exile, and now the galaxy faced something it had never encountered before. The Void Swarm had returned. The alien fleet that had first been called Void Runners was not exploring or conquering. They were fleeing in terror from something that consumed entire star systems. Something that had already destroyed half of their home galaxy. Something that was now following them here. How many ships in the swarm? Song asked his aide. We estimate. Over 10 million vessels, replied Lieutenant Park Seo-young. They move as one organism, adapting to every tactic used against them. The Council's fleet is being systematically destroyed. Song studied the reports from the front lines. The Galactic Council's response had been predictably methodical. They had formed committees to study the threat. They had developed standard battle procedures. They had created detailed plans for evacuation and resource allocation. All of it was useless against an enemy that learned and adapted faster than bureaucracy could respond. Sir, Park said quietly, we're receiving transmission requests from multiple Council species. They want to speak with you directly. Song was not surprised. Word had spread through unofficial channels that humans were not entirely gone from the galaxy. Captain Jeon Minseo's rescue of the Zalani had become a legend among the younger aliens. Ambassador Shin Do-won's hidden network had saved thousands of lives over the past 2 years, and now, with the galaxy facing extinction, even the proud Altarians were setting aside their pride. Put the first one through, Song said. The hologram that appeared was Counselor Vextar of the Altarian Empire, the same alien who had voted for humanity's exile 7 years ago. His golden skin looked pale, and his usual arrogance was replaced by something Song had never seen in an Altarian before: fear. General Song, Vextar said, his voice barely steady. I come to you not as a representative of the Council, but as someone whose people are about to die." "I'm listening," Song replied. "The swarm has reached our outer colonies. Our fleets cannot stop them. Every strategy we try, they counter within hours. Every weapon we deploy, they adapt to within days. Our military commanders say we have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach Altaria Prime." Song had seen the battle reports. The Altarian fleet was the most disciplined and technically advanced in the galaxy. If they could not stop the swarm, then conventional tactics were truly hopeless. "What do you want from me?" Song asked. "Help," Vextar said simply. "We need the kind of thinking that doesn't follow rules. The kind of creativity that comes from chaos instead of order. We need human military strategy." Before Song could respond, another transmission came through. This one was from Zenthara of the Vegan Confederacy. The cold, logical alien who had once criticized human emotion was now openly weeping. "General, please," she said. "The swarm destroyed the Vegan homeworld 3 days ago. Billions of my people are dead. The survivors are scattered across refugee ships with nowhere to go. The Council evacuation procedures failed completely. More transmissions followed. Species after species, all begging for the help they had once rejected. The same aliens who had called humanity chaotic and dangerous now desperately needed that chaos and danger. Engineer Oh So-young entered the command center carrying a data pad filled with technical specifications. She had spent the exile years developing new technologies based on human approaches to problem solving. Adaptive systems that learned from failure instead of being destroyed by it. Weapons that could improvise and change tactics on the fly. Defenses that got stronger under pressure instead of weaker. "The Council has officially requested access to our technology archives," she reported. "They're offering to restore our membership in exchange for our help." Song almost laughed. "After 7 years of calling us dangerous, now they want our weapons. It's not just weapons they need," said diplomat Nam Woo-jin as he joined them. He had been coordinating with the underground resistance movements across the galaxy. "I've been in contact with rebel factions in the Council itself. They say the leadership is paralyzed. They can't adapt to fighting an enemy that doesn't follow their rules." "What kind of rebels?" Song asked. "Mostly younger aliens who grew up hearing stories about human heroism. They've been studying our military history, our diplomatic approaches, our scientific methods. They call themselves the Coalition for Adaptive Response. On the tactical display, another system went dark as the swarm consumed it. Song watched the light fade and thought about all the lives that had just ended, civilians who had trusted their governments to protect them, children who would never grow up, families torn apart by an enemy that the galaxy's greatest minds could not understand. "Sir," Lieutenant Park said urgently, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Void Runner refugees. They want to negotiate." The hologram that appeared was unlike anything Song had ever seen. The alien was tall and graceful, with dark skin that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes were ancient and sad, filled with the weight of losing everything. "I am Whisper of Distant Stars," the alien said in a voice like wind through empty spaces. "I speak for those who once called the void home." "You're the ones the swarm is chasing," Song said. "We are what remains of a galaxy that thought it could." "Fight them with logic and order," Whisper replied. "For 1,000 years, we tried to reason with the hunger. We built perfect defenses and calculated optimal strategies. We followed every rule of warfare and diplomacy. But it didn't work. The hunger does not follow rules. It learns from pain and grows stronger through defeat. Every victory against it teaches it how to win. Every weapon used against it becomes part of its arsenal." Song felt a chill. Then how do you fight something like that? You don't fight it, Whisper said. You confuse it. You surprise it. You do things that make no logical sense but feel right in your heart. You sacrifice efficiency for compassion. You choose hope over wisdom. Song understood. You need chaos. You need humanity. We have observed your species from afar since our arrival. You are the only ones who think the way we should, have thought. The only ones who might succeed where an entire galaxy failed. Engineer. O leaned forward. What exactly is the swarm? What are we really facing? Whisper's ancient eyes grew even sadder. Ourselves. The hunger was created by our greatest scientists as the ultimate expression of order and efficiency. It was designed to eliminate chaos, to perfect all life by consuming imperfection. It succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The implications hit Song like a physical blow. The swarm was not an alien invasion. It was the logical endpoint of the same thinking that had driven humanity into exile. Perfect order, consuming everything that did not fit its definition of efficiency. The hunger cannot understand sacrifice, Whisper continued. It cannot predict actions taken for love instead of logic. It cannot adapt to strategies that choose to lose in order to win something greater. Diplomat Nam stepped forward. The Council will never approve this kind of approach. They'll want detailed plans and guaranteed outcomes. Then don't ask for approval, Song said. Oh, how long would it take to deploy our adaptive technologies to willing fleets? If we skip the testing and approval phases? Maybe 2 weeks. And our evacuation protocols? We could start moving civilians immediately, but not through official channels. We'd have to use the underground networks. Song looked around at his team. They were all thinking the same thing. They could follow proper procedures and watch the galaxy die slowly, or they could break every rule and give it a chance to live. Send a message to every rebel faction, every resistance group, every young alien who ever dreamed of heroes, Song said. Tell them that if they want to save their worlds, they need to be willing to fight like humans. And if the Council tries to stop us? Nam asked. Song smiled grimly. Then we'll remind them that sometimes the best way to save something is to break all the rules protecting it. On the tactical display, another system fell to the swarm. But for the first time in 7 years, Song felt hope. The galaxy was about to remember what it meant to fight with heart instead of just mind. It was about to remember what it meant to be human.